Hello viewers, welcome back to this lesson. We are going to start setting up our database using SQLite. Okay, SQLite is going to be our database. Remember, initially we installed SQLite 3 here. Okay, we are going to set it up. The post we have here is not what we are not going to make use of this. We are going to set up a database where we are going to be adding the post and enable us to persist the post when we create it. Okay, why do we need to use SQLite? I have already explained it in the introductory part of this course. Okay, one, it is serverless, it is embedded into your application. It is very simple and it is also file based. Okay, and it is perfect for this course, guys. It is very perfect for this course. Okay, so we are going to set it up. I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to name the folder dbconfig. Create a db.config. I'm going to create a file inside this folder. Can name it anything, but I'm going to name it database.js, like this. I have already shown you the documentation earlier, so you can visit this link. Okay, you can go to this link here. Okay, you just go to this repo here. I also included the link in the description. You can just follow the link to visit this URL here. Okay, now you just come to this documentation. Click on documentation. So you are going to see all the setup that I'm going to use here. Okay, so this is the setup, guys. Okay, so in case if you want to just do it on your own, but if you are following along, you can also make use of it. Okay, these are the setup I'm going to use for this database. Let's jump into VS Code. So I'm going to import the SQLite. Remember, we have already set our project to use import. Okay, so import SQLite. So it is a default export, so you can actually name it anything, but I'm naming it SQLite 3. It's going to be from SQLite 3, just like this. Const SQLite, like this, is going to be SQLite 3. It has a verbose object, and it's actually method. Okay, it has a verbose method. Just call it like this. The verbose method allow extra debugging and logging inside the SQLite. Even if you don't call the verbose, it will still work. In development, it is required that you use the verbose method in case if there is anything that goes wrong, it's going to log the error and traces for you. So that's why I'm using the verbose. Okay, it's not actually required in production. But it's okay to use it like this. To connect to the database, we say const db equals to new. The SQLite is going to give you the database constructor. So that's why we are using new. So it has a database. So the database is actually a constructor function. And it's a class. All right. If you look at here, you can see what it is required. File name, which is a string, and a callback. Okay, so we are going to pass a file name. If the file name doesn't exist, it is going to create the file name in this directory. If I name it test.db, the next thing we want to pass is the callback function, which is going to return error in case if there is error, just like this. Then we check if there is error. If there is error, we are going to return. We just log the error by console.log. I just log the error. Then if there is no error, I'm going to log connected to database like this. Then I need to export the DB. I'm going to export default DB so we can import it from other files. Okay, If I go to the app.js and import the DB, import DB like this. So when you are importing from your own file, guys, when you are importing from your own module, you need to include the extension at the end, put .js, because this is the extension .js, or else it will throw error. You can see connected to database. It created a database known as test.db in this root. Okay, I don't want to create a database in this root. I want it to be in a folder known as databases, in case if you want to create more database. Okay, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to delete it. Okay, I can't delete it because the server is running. I have to stop the server before deleting it. Delete. Okay, the database is deleted. So I want to wrap this in a function, guys. I want to wrap it in a function that will allow us to create the database. Okay, I'm going to wrap it in a function. Let me wrap it in a function. I'm going to call the function create db const create db. It's going to be an arrow function like this. Now the function is going to take the database directory, okay, and also the database name. So the database directory, db directory, is going to take it as a parameter, and also going to take the db name as a parameter. Okay, so this database here, the db name I pass here is going to be a parameter here, and the directory, either the root or any folder you want it to be, is going to be the directory. I'm going to use let here to define db path. So db path, so by default it is going to be null. I want to check if this directory exists. If it doesn't exist, I want to create the directory. This is because if I pass database slash, okay, if I try to access this directory now, it is going to throw error. Okay, if I run this code now, okay, it is going to throw error because it is going to be accessing this database folder which doesn't exist in our root directory. So let me run the code. Okay, you can see it is now throwing error now, unable to open database. Okay, this is because this directory that I pass here doesn't exist. Okay, so that's why it is showing the error. So to avoid the error, I want to check if the directory exists. If it doesn't exist, we want to create it. Okay, so and it is going to be happening inside the function. I'm going to check if. Now, to actually create a directory, we need to import the fs, that is the file system from the node. I'm going to import fs from fs. Fs is a file system that enables us to write and read files. Fs allows you to write and read files, okay, including directory as well, and many other methods that are available within fs. So we are going to use the fs to check if the path exists. Okay, so I check fs.exist. So I'm going to use the sync method. Okay, so the sync method, you need to pass the directory. So the directory is going to be the db dar. So we need to check it. So, but now I'm going to check if it doesn't exist. This exclamation is going to check if it doesn't exist. So if it doesn't exist, then I need to create the directory. What I'm going to do to run fs dot make directory, use the sync, then the directory you want to make, okay, or to create, you need to pass it. I'm going to pass the db dar directory. Okay, then I'm going to update the db path. Db path is equals to, I'm going to use template literal, db dar slash db name. The db name is going to be the db name you are going to pass here. What if a user doesn't pass a name? If when creating the database, If it doesn't pass the name of the, so it is also going to throw error. So what I'm going to do here is to give it a default DB name. I'm going to name it postdb.db. So that is the default name I'm giving it. I'm also going to give a default directory. Give it database like this. So that is the default directory and the default database name. So the DB, you can also name it .SQLite. So SQLite actually have different extensions. You can use .db or .SQLite. You can even use .SQLite TABLE, anyone. So you can decide to use .SQLite like this. You also accept it. You can also use .SQLite TABLE. You also accept it. So, but I prefer using .db like this. Since we have already passed the default directory and default DB name, so I'm going to use if else statement here. That is else. I'm going to say DB path is going to be equals to the same thing. So the reason it is the same thing is because if you pass a DB directory and DB name, it's going to use it here, which is this one here. But if you do not pass it, it is going to use the default here. Okay, so that's why I return the same thing, just like that. That's the DB path. I need to create the database now. This one that I'm having here, I will put it inside the function. We'll just put it inside the function like this. Now, instead of just hard coding the DB path here, I'm going to change it to DB path like this. If there is no error, it will log this message connected to database. And if there is error, then it is going to log the error, just like what it is logging here already. Now, at the end, I'm going to return the database. So after connecting to the database, I'm going to return the DB. So I'm going to return DB like this. Okay, and now instead of exporting the DB, I'm going to export the function, which is create DB. So I'm exporting the create DB now. So, and this is it. Let's go to our app.js now. Let me change this one to create DB. That's what we're importing. So you can just call the function what you're importing anything, since it is a default export. Okay, I can decide to call it database, just like this, and it is a function. So just name it create DB. To create the database, I need to call this function. I need to call it. You can see the database doesn't exist. To call the function, I just call it like this, create database. Okay, if I do not pass any directory, so let's see what will happen. I'm going to save. Okay, you see it connected to database log here, and you can see that a new folder has been created known as database, and inside it I have postdb. Okay, so that is the database name, postdb. Let me just stop the server. I'm going to delete this folder. Let's delete it. Okay, if I pass a folder, let me name it my database folder. The database name is going to be my database.db. Now let me save it. Okay, now let's run the server again. Okay, do you see now it created another folder? It created a folder known my database folder, and inside it, it has a database name, my database.db. Okay, that is how I want it to function. So what I'm going to do here, just stop the server, delete the database folder. Don't actually need it. Delete it. So, and I don't need this import here. I don't need this import here. I don't need it here. Okay, just leave it. But now we have just created a database. We just created the logic to connect to database. In the next lesson, we are going to learn how to create a table. thank you for watching this session. Hello viewers, welcome back to this course. In this session, we are going to discuss about structure query language. I am introducing it because we shall be making use of it to interact with our database since we are making use of SQLite, okay? So in the project section, we are going to interact with the database using structure query language, and I'm introducing it to you. This is not a full course, okay? It is just the basic knowledge you need to know to get started or follow along within this course, okay? What is a SQL or SQL? SQL stands for Structure Query Language. SQL is a language for handling structured relational data. It is the language that you use to interact and manipulate data in relational database management system. And when we talk about relational database management system, we are referring to the kind of database that allows you to structure your data in table. You can organize your data using table, and your data can be entered in columns and rows, just like the example I have here. Okay, and for you to be able to interact with this database, you need structure query language, which is known as SQL, to be able to interact and manipulate data within the database. SQL is actually a programming language that you use to interact with this database, okay? So we have different databases, non-SQL and SQL database. So all the relational database management system make use of SQL commands. And you use these SQL commands for performing CRUD operations in a relational database management system. You can insert data, update data, delete data, and fetch and filter data within your database using the SQL commands. And we are going to see how to use it in this course. Popular relational database management system, okay, that make use of SQL. We have SQLite. I'm going to introduce SQLite in this course. That is why I'm introducing the SQL language for you. We also have MySQL. It's also popular relational database management system that make use of SQL commands, and PostgreSQL as well. We also have the Oracle database, okay? All of them are relational database management system. And we also have Microsoft Access, okay? If you have worked with Microsoft Access, it resembles Excel. You can make use of MySQL to actually interact with it, okay? This is one of the verbs you need to know in SQL, create. The create table command is used to define a new table in your database. This is a one-time setup step before you can perform any other CRUD operations. For example, this command you see here will create a blog post table. So the command is create table. Okay, these are the keywords, create table. Then this one represents the name of your what the table you want to create, in this case blog post, okay? Inside parentheses, you need to define the schema of your data. For example, here we have the ID. The ID represents the feed name, okay? Then the int here represents the data type. In this case, it is an integer. So now you also have another keyword, primary key. In this regard, this ID is going to be the primary key of that particular table. We also have another keyword, auto increment. It means that this ID feed is going to be an integer, and it is going to be a primary key, and it is going to auto increment when you add a data. The table is also going to have title, and the type of data you want to store is varchar, okay? So that is variable characters, okay? This number represents the number of characters you want this title to contain. Not null means that this title must contain value when you are sending data. The table is also going to have content, and the type is going to be text. The table is going to have an author as well. with variable character, and the value is going to be 100. Okay, created at is a feed. The data type is going to be timestamp. That is the keyword here, timestamp, and the default value is going to be a current timestamp. Automatically, when you insert data into the table, a current timestamp is going to be inserted. Okay, when you run this command, it is going to create a table that have blog posts with these feeds. Let's see what we have next. We have the insert. It is used for adding data. So the insert into command add new row record to a table. And for example, insert into is a keyword, the name of the table you want to insert the data. So that, for example, blog post. Okay, this blog post is having a field, title, content, and author. The values that you want to insert into that particular a row that contain the column, title, content, and the author. Inside the parentheses, you enter the value. So the first one corresponds to the title, the second one corresponds to the content, and the third one corresponds to the author. When you run this command, it is going to insert these values into this row that contain title, content, and the author. Let's see what we have next. Now we have the select. The select is used for reading data. So the select command is the most frequently used command. It retrieves data from table. This is the read operation in CRUD. So remember, CRUD stands for create, read, update, and delete. And the SQL command allows you to perform all these operations. Okay, these are the different ways of selecting data from database. For example, when you say select, select is a keyword, and we have the white card that means all. This asterisk means all. Select all from blog post. It's going to select all the data you have in that blog post. Okay, that is when you want to select all columns from the blog post table. Now we have another way of selecting specific column for all blog posts. For example, if you want to select the title, you just say select title, author, created at from blog post. It is going to select only the title, author, created at, okay, from the blog post table. You can also select posts by specific author. For example, select all from blog posts. You also have where, that is where the author equals to Alice. Just imagine you have different authors of blog posts. Okay, so you want to select all the posts authored by this person. So that is when you say where. Select all from blog posts where author equals to Alice. So actually it is going to return all the posts created by Alice. That is the basic select operation. Okay, let me see what we have next. We also have the update. The update is used for changing data. The update command modify existing record in a table. So the keyword here is update, then followed by the table you want to update something from. Okay, in this case is update blog post. So blog post is the table. Okay, and update is a keyword in SQL. Another keyword is set. So you set content. That means you want to update this particular feed content. So you want to update this content, the value of this content, you want to update it. Okay, so you say set content and you enter equals to. Equals to is also assignment. Okay, so that means you are assigning a new value to the content. Which of the posts do you want to update? That is where id equals to 1. The command is update blog post set content equals to this value where id equals to 1. So let's see what we have next. We also have the delete command for removing data. The delete command removes existing record from a table, and the SQL command is delete from. Okay, so you say delete from blog post is the name of the table where ID equals to 1. So it is going to delete this particular row that have an ID of 1. And the command is delete from blog post where ID equals to 1. Running this command is going to delete a blog post that have an ID of 1. That is the basic introduction to SQL commands. I hope with this basic knowledge you are going to follow along while working with our database in this course. Thank you for watching this section. Hello viewers, welcome back to this course. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to create table in SQLite database. In the previous video, we learned how to configure our database. So we created this function that enable us to connect to the database. This lesson, we are going to learn how to create a table from using the SQL command that we have already discussed in the previous lesson. So in the subsequent video, I'm going to restructure this app.js to use the MVC pattern. You can see that our app does not look very nice now. Okay, so we're going to restructure it later. But before then, I want us to set the database and everything to be working before we start adding route and restructuring this app.js. I need to click on the root directory of our project. I'm going to create another folder. I'm going to name it models like this. Okay, so now it is blank. So inside the model folder, I'm going to create another file. I'm going to name it post.js like this. Here, I want to import the db function we created earlier inside the db.config. Okay, we exported the function createDB. So I want to import it inside the post.js. So I'm going to import it like this, import createDB. You need to add the extension since it is a custom module. So just add .js like this. The next step is to create the DB from the function. Since the function return the DB object, just like here, so it will return DB object. I need to call the function. So const db equals to create db. By default, it is going to create the db inside a folder known as database, and the post db is going to be created for us. Okay, so the next thing now is to write the SQL query to create the database. So I'm going to name it const SQL query equals to create table. Then the name of the table I want to create is going to be post. Okay, now inside parentheses, this is where I need to define the schema of my table. It's going to have an ID, and the ID is going to be an integer, and it is going to be not null. Let us make it primary key. We can also make it auto increment. Okay, so it is going to be auto increment each time we add a new data. Need to separate it with comma. It's going to have title, and the title is going to be a varchar. So these are different data type varchar. You can add the maximum character you want. So if I add 250, it is going to have a maximum character of 250. I can also make it not null. Separate it with comma, add content. The content is going to be a text, is another data type, text. Also make it not null. The next one is going to be author. So we can also make it text and not null. We can add category as well. Category is going to be a text. If you put not null, so by default it is going to be blank or null. You don't need to specify null. You can also specify default value to be null. So you can also specify it like this. But if I do not specify it like this, it is going to be null by default. Okay, so I separate it with comma. So I'm going to make the category to be optional. When you're adding a new post, you must provide the title, content, and the author, but the other ones are optional. The post may not have category, so it is going to be optional. You can also have a future image URL. Let me just make it a text, and it is going to be null by default. So let's add created at. The created output is going to be a date time. So we add date time and we add a default, that is the default value. We are going to access the current timestamp like this, okay? Then separate it with comma. Can also add updated at. So the updated at is going to be the same thing with the created at like this. This is our SQL command to create table. So we are saying create table. We can also add if not exist. If not exist. So we are saying that create table if not exist, okay? So it will check if the table is not existing before it will try to create the table, okay? So how do we create the table? We need to use the DB to create the table. So the DB is going to give us a function that enables us to create the table. So I type DB dot, you access the serialize method. Inside the serialize method, you have a callback function. So add a callback function like this. Now inside the callback function, you can also use the DB object to run this command. So and it have a method called run. So I type db.run like this. And if you look at what it is required, it required the SQL, okay, SQL, which is a string, okay? So it will be expecting a SQL command. So I'm going to pass SQL query that I just entered here, SQL query. We are going to have another callback, and inside the callback we can access error object. If there is error, type error like this. Then we check if there is error, okay? If there is error, it means that you can see what it is returning. So if there is error, it will return the error, and if there is no error, it is going to return null. So we need to check if there is error. So I am going to type if error. If error, this time around I'm going to check if there is no error. So if there is no error, I'm going to return console.log table created successfully. Table created successfully. And if that is if there is no error. So but if there is error, I'm going to log, that is console.log error creating table. So I can also pass the error so that I can see the error that is returned, okay? So let's save our work. Okay, I think I have typo here. So after updated at, you should add space like this, okay? So that the updated at, add space, okay? And each of these field must be separated with comma, okay, except the last one. So the updated at does not have comma separated, okay, because it is the last one. Let's test it to see if our table will be created. If you look at our project, you can see there is no database, okay? So it simply means that when we run this command, we're going to create folder and create database inside the folder, and inside the database, we are going to create this table that have these feeds. To run this command, I need to export the DB so we can be able to import it in our app.js. So let me export it. Export default, type export default DB. Let me save the work. Now let's go to the app.js. We are going to import the DB, but before then, let me run this application. So let me open the terminal, open it, npm run dev. Okay, our app started, okay? So just server is just running, but the database has not been created and our table has not been created as well. So what I'm going to do now is to import the DB. So here I'm going to import DB. So I'm importing it from model/post. Okay, here I'm importing it from this file. Okay, and I need to put the .js at the end. So if it is your own module that you are importing, you need to add the extension .js, else it is going to throw errors. By importing this DB, by saving this work, it is going to go through these files here, okay? It is going to go through this file. First of all, it is going to create the DB, okay, and the DB it is going to create the database, and it is going to run this query that we have here. Okay, that's why I just imported this DB here. So I'm not making use of the DB, but just to run that command, I need to import it. So let me save this work now and look at the terminal and see what will happen. Let me save it. You can see connected to the database and table created successfully. And if you look at our project now, we have the database folder. Inside the database folder, we have the post.db. Now, if I click on the post.db, let's check out. You can see under the table, we have the post table, the one we created. Look at our code here. Under the post model, we name it post. Okay, so this is what we are getting here, post, and we have the ID, title, content, author, category, feature, image, created at, and updated at. So they are here. If you want to explore your database in VS Code the way I'm seeing it here, so you need to install this extension. So you just go to extension. Let me search for it. So right now I don't have internet connection, so but I've already installed it. So you need to search for SQL. Okay, this is the SQL viewer. So this is the extension you need to install, guys. So once you install it, and you can be able to explore your SQLite database. Else you can, if you do not install this extension or related extension, you cannot be able to view it. Okay, so you cannot be able to view this .db. You can also use the DB browser that I have already shown you where to download it from. I have already installed DB browser. Let me go to desktop and open it. Okay, it's here. Okay, so I want to open this file with DB browser so you can see it inside my project. So if I just click reveal in Explorer, so I'm going to just open it. So it is now open in DB browser, and if you look at it now, we have the table, the post table. Right now there is no value because we have not added any content, okay, into this table. The table is totally blank. We have the table created with all the feeds. You can use the DB browser to open your database as well, or you just install this extension that I showed you. Okay, you can install SQL viewer or related extension to be able to view it in VS Code. So I will be making use of this SQL viewer so that I will not go out of VS Code when I'm working with my project. All right, so that is how to create table, guys. And you can see it is very simple. Just by following this simple step, guys, we will be able to create our table. In the next lesson, we are going to see how to create a function that will enable us to add content into the table. Okay, stay tuned. Hello viewers, welcome back to this lesson. We are going to continue working with our database. This is where we stopped in the previous lesson, guys. I have not added anything. In the previous lesson, we actually learned how to create table in SQLite database. Okay, this is the table we created. We are going to see how to add data into the SQLite database. So I'm going to add comment here. This comment is for create table. So let me add another comment here. This comment is going to be for insert data. We are going to add logic that will enable us to insert data into this table. So hope you people are seeing my view. Let me zoom in like this. So I just zoom in so that you will see my code directly, guys. So the logic to insert data. So I'm going to start by defining the SQL command that will enable us to insert data into the database. So I'm going to type const insert query equals to, the command is going to be insert into, the name of the table we want to insert the data is post. Okay, so insert into post like this. Now inside parentheses like this is where you need to define the feed that you want to insert the data into. Since some of them are optional, so I have to define the feed. So if I'm going to insert all the data in all the feed, I can just define the value direct. But since some of them are optional, So I will only insert the data that are compulsory. I'm going to the title, content, author, and category. They are compulsory. So I'm put it here. Title, content. I also have the author and category. Then you need to specify the values of the data you want to insert. So I'm going to add values. Inside parentheses again, you need to specify the values of the data you want to insert. You want to escape SQL injection, so we are going to put a placeholder. So to escape SQL injection, I need to use a placeholder instead of adding the value direct. So I'm going to type placeholder, that question mark, separate each with comma. Each of these placeholder correspond to the field I have here. So the first one is for the title, second one for the content, and so on. So I have 4 here. So I also have 4 placeholders. So this is going to escape SQL injection, and it is the best practice instead of passing the value direct. Now this is our insert query. To insert the data, we need to access the prepared statement from the DB. Just type const statement db.prepare. It have a prepare method like this, and it requires the SQL. You need to pass this query inside. I need to pass the insert query like this. Now the prepare statement, this prepare is what actually enable the database to escape any SQL injection. Okay, and you can see we are using placeholder here. That means that we are not actually passing the value direct. Okay, we are not passing the value direct into the database. So it is going through this prepare statement, which is now going to escape any SQL injection. SQL injection is just like a malicious code that may be inserted or that may be coming from the client. Okay, now that we have the statement, then the next thing is to use the run method that is available in this statement. So we now say statement.run. Now the run method is going, you can see what it is expecting. It is expecting a callback, so you can access callback. But because we are using a prepare statement, we actually need to pass the value that we want to insert into the database. Okay, so and you are going to pass it as an array because we have multiple values here. That's why I'm passing it as an array. So the next one is going to be the callback. We're going to have access to the callback. So the callback is going to give us an error. So we have to access the error. If there is error, it is going to return the error. But if there is no error, that means the data was inserted successfully. If there is no error, it is going to return null. What I'm going to check now, to check if there is error, so this time around, I'm checking if there is no error. If there is no error, I'm going to return console.log. So I'm going to log post with ID. So to access the ID, we need to access it from the statement object. Okay, so this statement object is going to return the ID that was inserted. Now we access it from, so if I'm using a normal function here, I can access it with this dot last ID. So this last ID property is coming from this statement. But now I cannot access this because I'm using arrow function. This is going to be undefined here. You can see it is undefined. So what I'm going to do here, if I change this into normal function, the normal function like this, and remove the arrow, let me just remove the arrow. So now this is going to represent the result. You can see now, okay? So it is going to represent this statement, okay? But since I prefer using arrow function, I can access this thing from the statement. So what I'm going to do, return the arrow function back like this. Now, instead of using this, I'm going to use the statement because that is exactly where I can access this last ID. The values we want to insert into the database is we need the title. This is where we need to enter it. So I want to hard code it now. So I'm going to add first post. This is the title. So the content is going to be, this is the content of the first post. We need to pass the author. The author is going to be John Doe. So the category is actually optional, but we have accepting it here. So let me just add category as test. Now these are the values. These values we enter here through this run. The values we enter pass here is actually going through this prepare statement here. Okay, so it is very dangerous to pass the values direct into here. So you can equally say, okay, instead of this, you can replace this placeholder with the value here. You can actually replace the value like this. You can actually replace all these values like this, but it is not advisable for a professional working database. Okay, so you need to use placeholder. That's what I'm doing here. So if there is no error, it is going to log the last ID. But if there is error, we are going to log error inserting data. So I can also pass the error. So save it. What is going on here, guys, is that we have the insert query. This is the SQL query that will insert the data into the database. Then we have the prepare statement, which prepared this statement for us. Okay, that the query, and remove any SQL injection. Then we use the run method from the statement to actually run the query, where we pass the values that represent each of these placeholder here, and we are checking if there is error, because the callback function is going to return the error for us if there is error. If there is no error, it's going to log this thing, so with the last ID, and if there is error, it's going to log this one. You can see, just because I save this work, I have already saved it and it will run this code. Okay, so you can see post with ID 1, a post with ID of 1. So we need to put inserted. Before I save it, let me change it to post 2. Let me name this one second post. The content of second post, the author is going to be Jane Doe. Let me save the work now and watch the console. Let me just save it. So you can see that post with ID 2 inserted. That means we have inserted 2 posts. Let's go to our table and check. I click on the table. So I'm going to refresh. You can see we have 2 posts inserted. First post, okay, it's saying first post, and this is the content. Okay, inside here you can see the created at. The date was inserted automatically, and likewise this one. We have the second post as well. Okay, so our posts were inserted, and the one that doesn't have value, that the feature image is null, because we are not passing any value to it. So, and there is no error. So it will be better for us to wrap this inside a function so that we can be able to access it in our route. Let me create a function. Const create post is equals to, I will be using arrow function like this. This function is going to give us the post that we want to actually insert into the database. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to accept the post here. So we just accept the post. This function is going to return a new promise for us. So I'm going to type return new promise. Okay, the promise is going to have a callback, and the callback is going to give us a resolve and reject like this. I'm going to grab the whole of this thing, this insert logic. Okay, I'm going to grab everything and put inside this new promise. Okay, let's put everything inside like this. Let me save it like this. The post we have here is going to be an object, so let's just substitute the value with the values. Okay, so I'm going to replace the title with post.title. replace the content, place the content with post.content, then replace the author with post.author and the category as well. Okay, so the post is an object. So to optimize our code better, I can also destructure these values from here. Can destructure the title, content, author, category. I can destructure it like this. So I'm going to replace all the posts and just remove the post and just add the title, content, author, and category. Okay, and when you're adding it, it must correspond to the values you have here. So the order in which you are adding it. Okay, so that's how we're adding it here. We are checking if there is no error. So let me expand instead of logging it. So I'm going to return. Let me just expand this function. Let me just expand it like this. I'm going to return resolve. So this resolve is this function here, okay, that is going to resolve if the promise goes successfully. So I'm going to resolve it with an object. So okay, I'm going to resolve it with this object, the new post that we created. Okay, just resolve it with the new post, but I'm also going to add the ID. So I'm going to add the ID. So the ID is going to be, let's just put ID equals to, the ID is going to be the statement dot last ID. So I'm just returning the new post with the ID. Okay, so the post was created with the ID is what I'm returning if there is no error. So if there is error, I just want to call the reject function. Okay, so this is just promise, guys. So I will call the reject function. Instead of console.log, I will just call return reject and pass the error. So this error that I'm getting here is what I'm passing into this reject. Okay, so it is going to be null if there is no error. Let's save our work now. With this, we have successfully created a function that enables us to create a new post. Okay, I'm no longer going to export this DB. Okay, rather I'm going to export this function. Just type export like this, save it. Yeah, I'm getting error now because this DB is no longer existing. Okay, so I'm going to the app.js. Instead of importing the DB, I'm going to import create post. Okay, I imported create post now. Now, if let's test this create post function, guys. Let's just test it here. Call the create post function. Okay, so I can use await. Okay, so I'm going to use await const result equals to await create post. The create post function require the title, content, author. Okay, so let me just type title. So the title is going to be test post. The content is going to be test post body. Then let's add the author. The author is going to be, let's just type Jane. We have the category. Category is going to be, let's just type web. Now let's log the result. CLG the result. So just for testing purpose, we will use try and catch here, but for testing purpose, guys, if there is no error, we are going to get the result. Okay, so let me quickly save this and see if this new post will be added. Currently we have 2 posts. Okay, if I refresh our database, we have 2 posts. So let me save it now. You can see we have a new post, guys. The new post that was created was logged here. This is it. And if I go back to our database and refresh it, we have another post. Okay, test post, and the new post has been added, guys. Just like that. We're going to use this function later. In the next video, I'm going to be very fast, guys. I'm only assuming that a beginner is taking this course, okay? But since I already know how the SQL work, I'm going to be a little bit fast in the next video. Okay, so let me just remove this We don't need it now. Okay, so I'll just remove it. So and save the work, and that is it, guys. That is how to insert data into the SQL database. We were able to create our own function to enable us to insert the data, and we can use this function anywhere in our app. Okay, in the next video we are going to learn how to get data. Thank you. Hello everyone, welcome back to this lesson. We are going to learn how to read data from our database. In the previous lesson, we learned how to insert data. So this is the function we created last time. So we are going to continue from where we stopped last time, guys. Inside our model folder, we have the post.js. That is where we are editing, guys. So I'm going to add a comment here. Get all post. So we are going to add the logic that will enable us to get all posts from our database. From now, I will just be wrapping everything inside the function. So I'm going to type const get all post. It's going to be an arrow function like this. As usual, I'm going to return a new promise. The promise is going to give us a callback that have resolve and reject. Then inside the callback body, this is where we want to define the logic to get our data. So I have a variable get all query. So I'm going to define the SQL statement, which is going to be select. So select all. What this asterisk means is that it is going to select everything, including the ID, title, content, everything. Okay, that is all. If you want to select specific item, you can actually say select title, content from. The name of the table is post. In this regard, it is going to select only the title. It is going to return only the title and the content from the table. But if you put asterisks like this, if you put asterisks, it is going to select everything. So let's test with this select title and content. Use the DB. When you are getting data from the database, you need to call the all. Okay, if you are getting all the data, so if you see all here, it means you want to get all the data. If you use the get method, that means you want to get a single data. Okay, so this get method will allow you to get a single data, that is single post. But I will use all now since I want to get all the post. You need to pass the SQL. So we have already written our SQL. You can equally pass your SQL direct here. It's the same thing as, okay, it's the same thing as copying this SQL and putting it direct here. It's the same thing. So, but I want my code to be well organized. So that's why I'm putting it in a separate variable, okay? So it's the same thing. So I put get all post query. The callback, so it is going to, you are going to access the callback. So you pass the callback, and the callback is going to give you two things. So the two things is going to be error. Okay, so if there is error, it will give you the error. And the second thing is the post. You can call it anything. Okay, you can say rows. You can say rows, or even the error, you can change it to anything, but I'll just use post like this. We check if there is error. So I prefer checking if there is no error. So if there is no error, return resolve. So I want to pass the data if there is no error. So I will just pass the post. There's going to be an array of posts. Then return reject. So if there is error, I'm going to reject and pass the error. Okay, so the error that I got from here is what I'm passing here. So pass error. Since it is a promise that resolve and reject, when we are accessing this get all post method, we are going to use try and catch. So in the try session, it is going to resolve. It is going to resolve with all the posts that we got. And if there is error, it is going to reject. That is in the catch session, we're going to catch the error. Okay, so that's why I'm just passing it direct here. Let me save it, and this is all we need to get all the posts. So let me add another logic to get a single post by ID. Let me add a comment, get post by ID. Let me quickly define this function, guys. Const get post by ID equals to a function. We are going to access the ID. It's going to be an arrow function like this. So we're going to return a new promise. So actually it's almost the same thing with what we have here, guys. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab this. Let me just grab this. Okay, so let's grab it like this. This one is return like this. Okay, and we're accessing the ID. Since you are getting a single post, the query is going to be select. Let me change it to get query. Now we are only accessing the title and the content. Okay, so but this time around I'm going to say where ID equals to placeholder. Remember, we don't insert the value direct. We are going to use a prepared statement. Okay, so that's why I'm just accessing it like this. Here that I say db.all, so I'm going to say db.get. So I'm going to pass the get query. Here I need to pass the ID. So I'm going to just put the ID like this inside an array. Okay, I can equally pass the ID like this. Since it is just a single value, I can pass the ID like this. Okay, but I want to stay consistent, so I will just pass it in as array, just like this. Okay, now I'm going to have a single post, so I will access single post instead of post. Okay, I'm going to get the error of the post as well. So if there is no error, so I'm going to return the single post, and if there is error, I will also log the error. Okay, so that is the logic to get a single post and get all posts. Okay, so let's export the function. Export, just export it like this. Export, so we can be able to use it in all our application. So it is time to test this function, guys. Okay, so let me go to the app.js. Let's import get all post, and also get post by ID. Let's test get all posts first. Let's get all the post. Const all posts equals to await. So we are using await because we are expecting it is returning a promise. Okay, await get all post. Get all post does not have any parameter, so we don't need to pass any argument. Okay, let me just log it. So I am assuming if there is no error. Okay, if there is no error, so it will just log it. So I'm not catching the error since I'm just testing. Now let me open the console so we can test it. I'm going to type npm run dev. We're going to get all the posts if there is no error. Press enter. Okay, we didn't get all the posts. This is because I have not saved this work. Okay, let me just save it. Right now you can see we have all the posts. Okay, so it is an array of posts. You can see all the posts. We have 3 posts all together, and remember that from our query we are getting the title and the content. So you can see each of them have the title and the content for all the posts. If I go back now, instead of getting the title and the content, I can just change this one to get all. That is, you type asterisk like this. Let me save it now. So let's go back. You can see now it is getting all the feeds. you can see it is getting all the feeds now. So we have the ID, the date, the author, the category, and the date created. Okay, you can see through the three posts what we have in our database here. So if I refresh, we have three posts. Okay, so that means the get all post function is working, guys. Now let's check the get post by ID. Let me just remove this one. Let me remove it. Let's test get post by ID. Const single post equals to await get post by ID like this, and I need to pass the ID. So we have let's get the post with ID 3. So I just need to pass 3 here. We are not checking for error. So if there is error, it is going to break our app, but I'm not, since we are just testing, so I'm not going to use try and catch. Let's log the post. We just log the single post. If there is no error, it is going to return just a single object that contains the post. So let me save the work now and go to the console. Now you can see it is returning the single post, because in our query we are only accessing the title and the content. Okay, if I go back now and select all, okay, where we say select title and the content, if I change it to select all like this, save it, you can see now it is getting all the feeds. Okay, post with ID of 3, and see all the feeds are now here. So if I change the ID to 2, let me go back, let me change the ID to 2. Okay, let me go to the console and save it. You can see we have the post with ID of 2. So that is how to create a function that will enable us to get all posts and single posts. In the next video, we are going to learn how to update our data in the database. Thank you for watching this session. Hello viewers, welcome back to this lesson. In the previous lesson, we learned how to get all posts and also get a single post. So we define a function that enables us to get all the posts and also get posts by ID. Okay, so let me just remove this for now. Today, we are going to learn how to update a post in our database. So let me go back to the model folder under the post. Is the where we left off last time. This is the last function we defined. So I'm going to add a comment here, update post. So update existing post. So this is where we are going to add the logic. I'm going to define a function const update post. It's going to be an arrow function. So the update post is going to take the post that we want to update. Let's name it post. I'm going to return a new promise, which is going to give us a callback function with a resolve and reject. Okay, inside the promise body, this is where we are going to define our logic to update the post. As usual, I'm going to define a SQL variable update query equals to update followed by the table you want to update. Okay, so we want to update the post table. Remember, we created post table. So update post. Then you need to use the set keyword here. Set. Now, what do you want to update? Now you need to define the feeds you want to update. So we want to update the title. Set title equals to, normally I use placeholder, so I don't want to pass the value direct. Okay, I have already explained it several times why we need to actually use the placeholder, mostly to escape SQL injection. You need to separate it with comma. You need to check the content. Set the content equals to placeholder. Separate it with comma. Author equals to placeholder, and category category equals to placeholder the where ID equals to placeholder. The SQL is update post set title equals to placeholder, content equals to author, category where ID equals to placeholder. Okay, so we don't want to pass the value direct, guys. So we are going to use a prepared statement from the DB, which they have already given us. Each time you are inserting data, it is advisable to use this method. We need to prepare our statement. We say const statement, but I prefer using shortcut statement like this equals to, you can now say db.prepare. Now you need to pass the SQL command, which is our query here. So I'm going to pass the update query. During this method, it is going to escape all the SQL injection that may be coming from the client. Okay. The statement is going to provide us with the run method. You type .run, okay, like this. You can see it is giving us callback. But because we are using prepare statement, we need to pass the data we want to actually send. Okay, that is the data we want to update. Okay, the first thing we pass is the data. I'm going to pass it as an array. And the second thing is going to be a callback function. So the callback is going to return error. If there is no error, I check in if there is no error. I'm going to return resolve. That is this resolve function. I'm going to resolve. That is the promise is going to resolve. So I'm going to pass the post. Okay, I will just, for now we just leave it like this. So let me just destructure this post content. Okay, I will just destructure it like this. So I need the title, the content, author, category, and the ID. Okay, I'm destructuring it. Okay, so since it is going to be an object, and this is exactly what I want to pass here, the values inside this array. I just pass it like this in the order in which I added it. So I'm expecting 5 things. You can see we have 5 placeholder, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you must put it in that order. You must put it in that order to avoid mismatching your content. So the ID is the last here. You can see the ID is the last placeholder. That's why I put it last. The title is the first. As that means it will be inserted in this order. We say if there is no error, we want to also return this content, the updated content. So I want to return it back to the user. So I'm just resolve it with the new post you updated if there is no error. Okay. So if there is error, I'm going to return reject. I'm going to reject with the error. So I'm going to catch this error during when I'm calling this function. So if there is error, I will use try and catch. If there is error, I will catch the error. So probably if there is no error, I'm returning the updated post. Okay. The statement also has another method called finalize. Because statement dot finalize can also check if there is error. If there is error, you can also log it. Okay. Okay. You just call the finalize method. I cannot equally call it when I create a database. Okay, so I will just here I will also call the finalize statement dot finalize. That's like that. So now let us check this update post function, guys. So I'm going to export it. Just export it like this. Let's go to our app.js. I'm going to import it. Update post. So let's test it here, guys. Okay, let's just test it here. I'm going to say const result equals to await update post. Okay, and we are going to pass the data we want to update. So right here, if we go to our post.db, let's just update this post, the one with ID of 1, and see what is there. I'm going to pass the ID is 1. ID is 1. So the post with ID of 1, we want to update it. So the title is going to be updated title. Updated title. Then the content is going to be updated content. We're also going to update the author. Let's just check new author. We can update the category as well. We name it as 2. Let me log the result like this. Okay, I'm going to save it. So when I save it, it is auto formatted. If you go to our post, if I refresh now, nothing has been updated. So we are trying to update post with ID of 1. Okay, you can see the author is John Doe. You can see it here. So let's go back. Let's open the terminal. I'm going to run npm run dev. Press enter. There is error, guys. There is error. No such. The error is no such table post on. So that means in our update post there is error, and you can see update post and our table is post. So let me change it to S. Okay, add S to it. Now let me save it now and watch the terminal. Save it. Okay, now it returned the new post that was updated, and you can see the updated content. Okay, if I go back to post.db, let me refresh to see the update. You can see now the title is now updated title, updated content. Okay, so even if I go to DB browser, I open it in DB browser like this and browse, you can see our table, everything updated. Okay, just like this. I close it, close this one. Okay, let me just remove this. Let me just remove it and save it. So we have implemented create post, get all posts, get post by ID, and update post. Okay, so in the next video we are going to learn how to delete post by ID. So thank you for watching this section. Hello viewers, welcome back to this section. We are going to learn how to delete content from SQLite database. In the previous video, we learned how to create a function that enables us to update post. Under the models folder, this is the post.js. Okay, this is where we stopped last time. We created this function that enables us to update post. Okay, so I'm going to add comment. We are going to create the delete post function, and it is going to take the ID as parameter. Okay, I'm going to define a function const delete post equals to the delete post function is going to take ID as parameter like this. As usual, we are going to return new promise. Then we need to pass a callback function that gives us resolve and reject. Now inside the body of the promise, we need to enter the logics to delete the post. Okay, so I'm going to define a constant delete query equals to template literal. So I'm going to write a SQL statement here. Delete from, you need to give the name of the table you want to delete something from. So in our own case, it is post table. That is delete from post. Then you use the where clause, where, then ID equals to placeholder. Remember, we don't pass value direct for best practice, so we use placeholder here. We need to prepare a statement because we are adding something into the database, so we use the prepare statement. So I'm going to say const statement From the DB object, we are going to access the prepare like this. The prepare method is expecting the SQL string, which we have already written here. You can equally pass it like this, okay? You can equally pass the SQL statement like this, but I prefer organizing the code in order. I will just pass the variable that I have here, the lead query, like this. The statement is giving us a database object that enable us to run this query. So what I'm going to do is statement.run. Access the run method like this. The run method, you can see what it is giving us here. Okay, so if we have parameter, we need to pass it before the callback. Okay, so in this case, we have one parameter, which is the ID. Normally, if it is one parameter, you can pass the ID like this. Okay, but in the previous one where I pass multiple parameters, I'm using array. Can see it here in under the update function. I'm passing these values inside array like this. But if it is one parameter, you need to pass it like this, or you can equally pass it inside the array and pass the ID like this. Okay, so I will just stay consistent by just passing it inside an array. We are going to have the callback. The callback is going to give us the error object. Okay, so if there is error, we are going to get this error. But if there is no error, we are going to get null. If the data was deleted successfully, we are going to get null from this error. So it is going to be null. So we want to check if there is error. If error, but I prefer checking if there is no error, which is by just adding this exclamation. I'm inverting this value. Okay, so if there is no error, I want to resolve. I type return resolve. So resolve is a function given us by the promise that allow us to resolve success from the promise. Okay, so it means that when I call the resolve, the promise went successfully. So I'm going to enter the resolve value. I will just resolve with the ID. So just the ID that was deleted. So I just pass the ID. That is, if there is no error, it will resolve with the ID. That means it is returning the ID that was deleted. If there is error, I'm going to return reject like this. Then I'm going to pass the error that was gotten from this place. Okay. So the error that was gotten from this place is actually what I am rejecting with. Okay, so that is it. So let me save this work. When I save it, it was formatted. Now let's go back to app.js and import this function and test it. So I go to the app.js. Remember, we are not testing with any endpoint. It is just for illustration purpose. We are just testing using the function like that. This is the previous function we created earlier. Okay, we are not making use of it. I'm going to import the delete post like this. Let's just test it by running the function. Okay, I'm going to test it here. Const delete result equals to await. We are going to use await delete post. The delete post, we need to pass an ID from our database. Let's check our post database so that we see what we have. So I just added some test posts here. So these are the ID. This ID represent this is the one provided automatically by the database. Okay, so this one is serial order, but this one is the one that the auto increment from our own data. So this ID here, so that's what we're actually checking, and we're using it to actually access our data. So here I have a post with ID of 3. So I'm going to delete this post. So I go back. Let me pass 3 like this. Let me log the result, delete result. Okay, just like this. Let's start our server, guys. So I'm going to start the server. I've already opened the terminal. Npm run dev. If everything goes successfully, this post with ID of 3 will be deleted from our database. So let me run the server like this. Okay, we are having error, syntax error. Okay, export. Okay, post.js, delete post was not exported. Okay, so we need to go back to our post.js. So we do not export the delete post. So let's export it like this. Export. Just watch the terminal. Let me save it. You can see we have 3 here. That means that post was deleted. Let's go back to the database. Okay, let's refresh this database. You can see the post with ID of 3 has been deleted. So let's go back to our app. Let me see another post. Okay, let's delete the one with ID of 7. This is the ID 7. So let me pass 7 here. Let me save it to return the 7. Then let's go back to our database and refresh it. You can see that post has been deleted. So it has been deleted. Let me remove it. It is just for testing purpose. So that is how to actually delete posts from database, guys. Okay, from our SQLite database, just by using this SQL command, you can easily delete posts. In the next session, we're going to learn how to restructure our app, especially this app.js, so that it can be able to use the routes and also organize it in order. Stay tuned as we continue in next session.